Hey, it's Dallas, time for another director's vlog, and it is time for another rendition of analyzing a scene. Last time I analyzed the final scene of episode 1, and today we are going to analyze the final scene of episode 2. This is where we take some of your favorite scenes, some of my favorite scenes, and I give you kind of a behind-the-scenes look into how the scene was written, some of the things that happened on the day that we were filming it, the meaning behind the scene. We just do a deep dive into some of the key scenes from season 1. And as usual, please comment below with the scenes that you want to see. The last time I did get a few of them that we're definitely going to be covering in the future, but if you've got any scenes, particularly scenes that maybe aren't quite as talked about, maybe smaller scenes or scenes that aren't kind of the big active scenes, if you'd like to see those analyzed, please let me know in the comments. And below the video, there is a subscription button and there is a notification bell. Please click on those. That is how we get this channel and how we get these videos into more people, in front of more people. And it's also how you can be notified anytime we have a new video. All right, so I'm going to get into the final scene of episode 2. This is one of my favorite scenes because episode 2 is actually the episode when people really start to dig into the show. Episode 1 is a lot of setup. Episode 1 ends with this big moment where Mary is redeemed, and that kind of launches people into the future episodes and they get really excited about it. Well, episode 2 is when people start to settle in. You're now getting to know the characters. You're now getting to love them. There was an earlier scene in episode 2 where Mary encounters Nicodemus out in the street. And that's actually got one of my favorite lines in the entire show. That's when Mary says to Nicodemus,
"I was one way. And now I am completely different. And the thing that happened in between was him."
Which is an epic line written by my co-writer Tyler Thompson. This final scene of episode 2, where we see the Shabbat dinner lived out from multiple directions, multiple angles. Different people are all experiencing this tradition that has been going back for thousands of years. In fact, we portrayed it at the very beginning of episode 2. The reason we did that was we wanted to show how long this tradition has gone and how important it was to the Jewish people. And we're going to see that even though people are quoting the same prayers and saying the same things and practicing the same traditions, the actual execution of it looks very different for different people. And so that's what we really wanted to emphasize, was the through line of this tradition and how similar it was, but how different it looked to a lot of people. And then, of course, focusing on which one Jesus actually shows up at. Where I'm going to begin is when Mary actually opens the door to her house. She's heard the knock. That's actually obviously a spiritual metaphor, but she's heard the knock. She opens the door and she sees a man that she recognizes. And so we're going to start right there with the door opening.
Hello, Mary.
That look when Mary first opens the door. I remember my dad mentioning that to me when he saw that in a trailer. He said, that makes me, that look alone is going to cause me to invest in this project. People have described that look many times. It's a beautiful performance by Liz Tabish, but opening the door and recognizing this man that had changed her life, but still not knowing exactly who he is or what he's doing, there's a lot summed up in that single look. And the fact that Jesus stands there and just has himself a normal look. Jonathan Rumi plays Jesus, does such a beautiful job of making Jesus human. And when she opens the door, it's not like there's a halo behind his head. And it's not like he's standing there all formal. He's just a guest and he's waiting for her to let him in. And obviously there's spiritual metaphor there. But one of my favorite moments of this whole scene is that we create a bit of awkwardness, which I think is rarely portrayed in Bible projects.
Hello.
It's good to see you.
Yes. Yes.
Awkward pause.
I don't want to be rude, but would it be okay if I...
Oh! Yes, of course. Please come in. I just never thought you'd, I have guests here.
Okay, so a couple things going on there. Number one, I love, again, the awkwardness, the fact that and we really try to bring humor. Humor is a very important part of this show. I believe that humor enhances the emotions of the scenes that are emotional, that are serious. We don't let them go too long without some bit of humor, because that actually gives the audience a bit of a breather, but also makes the emotional moments even more impactful. But it also really connects people to Jesus, and you'll see this later in the scene as well. But seeing Jesus act human, which is very realistic because Jesus was in human form, and we know that he was perfect and didn't sin, but that doesn't mean that he didn't experience all of the same things that we experience in normal everyday life. And so one of the things that we also portray is Mary saying yes. So Jesus says, "It's good to see you," and she says yes. That's a very common thread throughout the whole season. I'm not sure where it came from, why I decided to do that. I just think it summed up the kind of awe that people have when they are first encountering Jesus. So when Jesus first encounters Andrew, well, it's not the first time that he encounters him, but it's when he's talking to him on the boat in episode 4, and he says, "It's good to see you, Andrew." And Andrew just says, "Yes." You'll see that a lot in season 1. Multiple people, when they first meet Jesus or when he says something impactful to them, they have nothing to say other than, yes. Matthew says it to Jesus when he calls him in episode 7. This is one of the first indications of that trend happening often. But that awkwardness is very important, and I think that it contributes significantly to the show being seen by many people as an authentic portrayal of the humanity of all these people, including the humanity of Jesus. And then you see also Mary starts to do what I'm even doing now. I'm not doing it because I'm nervous, but she's doing it because she is. You start to talk, and you start to talk in clipped ways. You don't finish your sentences per se, and that's also very human and natural, and that's one of the things that we do in the writing, in the script itself. We will write in those pauses. We will write in those hesitations, those incomplete sentences, because that is a more human way of communicating. Now we see
It's my first time.
the introduction of Jesus' followers.
Rabbi.
You already know these men?
They are students of mine. I trust they have been polite.
Of course.
And of course she says, of course. She's now said that a couple times already. I just thought that would be a funny way of showing her nervousness and that she just keeps saying that word. But this is the introduction of the first 2 disciples that we see of Jesus, Thaddeus and little James. And again, I thought that was just be an interesting way to introduce them, kind of an innocuous way, without making a big deal out of it. More awkward silence.
Your guest can take the seat. Yes, Mary?
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Please have a seat. I keep saying of course a lot.
That line right there, I keep saying of course a lot. I remember when we were auditioning for the role of Mary, it's a very heavy role. It's a very intense role. And I wanted to know that people, whoever was going to play this role, was going to be able to deliver that moment, because there are multiple actresses who can do some of the more challenging things and the intensity and the emotion, but also not all of them can also be funny. And timing is a huge part of comedy. And so when Liz was auditioning, one of the things I wanted to see was if she could make this scene light instead of so heavy. And she did, of course. And that's what I love about Liz, and what I love about this performance and this character is that she's got different shades. And so not always just heavy. This is the first indication of seeing Mary actually be funny. And this line of, I just keep saying, of course, a lot, I just think is a very human moment. And now we're about to see more indications of Mary's inexperience with this. Growing up as a girl, she no doubt would have experienced Shabbat. All Jews experienced Shabbat on a regular basis, but Mary has fallen away from her faith, obviously, and is now coming back to it. And so maybe she wouldn't remember perfectly everything that she experienced.
Francis is the man I told you about who helped me.
Oh, yes, yeah. Mary told us so much about you.
Oh, I hope not too much.
I'm Barnaby. This is Shula. She is blind.
In case you couldn't
One
tell.
of my favorite moments in the whole show.
I'm so sorry. I don't actually know your name.
I'm Jesus of Nazareth.
Well, apparently something good can come from Nazareth. What?
And there it is. Okay, so 2 moments that happen in that clip. One is Barnaby making a joke, of course, about Jesus. And the one before that, when he introduces Jesus to Shula, and he says, she is blind. I remember just loving that. I remember when I wrote it, I was thinking, I really hope that whoever plays this part can nail that moment, because I think it's just so funny. Again, just the complete lack of guile, the complete lack of social pretense on Barnaby's part. He's just saying it how it is. And this actor, Aluk, is just so brilliant and funny and intuitive and intelligent. And so he delivered that so beautifully. I just love it. And I then, of course, when he makes this joke about Nazareth and no one else laughs, and everyone's looking at Jesus to see how he's going to respond, and Jesus winks at him. Now, a few people were actually bothered by that. Some people were uncomfortable with seeing Jesus behave in that manner, didn't think that winking was something that would have been done back then, which there's no evidence that winking didn't exist, but also just uncomfortable with Jesus being so casual. And I think that's actually what's drawn so many people to the show. And that wink alone has gotten as many comments as almost any other moment in the series. Is Jesus winking, I think, caused so many people to feel such warmth to and from Jesus in that moment, and realizing that that's exactly the kind of thing Jesus would have done. He wouldn't have taken things sensitively. And I think all of us need to work harder at being cool with jokes. I think sometimes we have a sensitivity problem more than we have a negativity problem in our culture, and we read into things. And I think Barnaby's making a joke. It's done with warmth and with fun. He's actually saying something nice about Jesus, and of course Jesus can take it. And that's what one of the key moments of the show was happened right then and there, because I think that set the tone for the rest of season 1.
Mary, I'm honored to be here. Why don't you begin?
Oh, no, I couldn't now that you are here. You must.
Thank you, but this is your home, and I would love for you to do it.
Get used to different. That's a key part of this scene. It's very different for a woman to read something to read, first of all, but to also lead a Shabbat dinner. Very, very rare if it ever happened, and Jesus is already causing people to get used to different.
Now the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts. And God completed on the 7th day his work that he did. And God abstained on the 7th day from all the work he did.
And here you see
And God blessed the 7th day.
Nicodemus and Mary are saying the same thing. I remember when I was on set with Nicodemus feeding Eric, who plays him the lines, because it was just too much to memorize and unnecessary to do so. But we wanted to show here, as you see, Matthew runs into the dog. Noah's leading, Noah, who plays Andrew, is leading Shabbat.
Who creates the fruit of the vine.
Andrew and Nicodemus would have had this memorized because they've done it so many times, but Mary is doing it for the first time in a long time, and so she's reading it. And so we love that juxtaposition. And then here, Matthew's sitting in front of the dog. A huge moment. And just that simple moment, I remember when we wrote these scenes, I had this visual for sure in my mind of the different Shabbat dinners all playing back to back, and the significant differences in them. And one of the key visuals that I had in mind was Matthew sitting in front of a dog and the dog sharing his food. Now, dogs at that time were significantly looked down on. Jews especially saw dogs as filthy. There was not the relationship with dogs that we have today. And putting Matthew on the same level as a dog really said a lot visually and made a big statement. And I think the loneliness of Matthew is portrayed beautifully by Paris. Now, that one we were shooting that, it was very difficult to get the dog to cooperate and to sit still. So that was not easy. But putting food on the ground and the dog eating the ground made it, at least this scene, doable.
Memory of creation.
And of course, as we've illustrated, Simon leaving the Shabbat meal. And this is a very huge moment. Working on Shabbat was as big of a sin as you could think of at that time.
King of the universe.
So I'll pause it there. So was it likely that Simon would have worked on Shabbat? Maybe not. That would have been considered such an egregious sin that it's possible that Simon wouldn't have done it. One of our biblical consultants, Messianic Rabbi Jason Sobel, one of his notes on it was he didn't think that was likely. But I do think it was plausible, because I do think we established that Simon was so desperate and that he was willing to do almost anything to protect his family, and financially desperate, spiritually desperate. And I think that it caused him to get to a place where he was willing to do things that he might not normally do. And the fact that his wife and his brother were so bothered by it, in my opinion, illustrated just how serious of an error that this was.
Who brings forth the bread from the earth. Amen.
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 And that's the end of the scene. We ended up showing at the end of the episode kind of a tag moment where Simon is down at the shore and the Roman soldiers show up, and we wanted to end the scene on a bit of an ominous note as well as a bit of a cliffhanger so that you're interested in where the story picks up in episode 4, to wonder what Simon exactly is doing with these Roman soldiers. But that moment of them wrapping up the Shabbat prayer and just the quiet of it, I just loved it so much. And just seeing these different scenes back to back, our cinematographer, Akis Konstantinopoulos, try saying that 10 times fast, does a beautiful job of portraying it. And some people thought it was a little dark. I know if you watch it on your computer, it might be a little dark. In some TVs, it might be dark. But back then, all they had was natural light of candles. And so it would have been pretty dark back then. I think some of the scenes end up looking like paintings, which I think are beautiful. But we also wanted to show the difference between the wealthy religious elite at Nicodemus's house and the poor, the Jewish common people in their homes. Which one did Jesus choose to be at? He chose to be at the home of Mary Magdalene, where there was this kind of misfit band of people, including someone who was blind, someone who was crippled. Jesus's 2 followers, Thaddeus and little James, are there, but Jesus comes to the homes of maybe the least of these. He didn't show up at the home where where maybe the religious leaders would have expected. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that scene and that breakdown and analysis of it. Please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And remember, get used to different. I'm wearing this shirt because it's one of our key themes and phrases. You can get that shirt at thechosenmerch.com, www.thechosenmerch.com. But it's also a motto of this show, and I hope that you will consider getting used to different as you watch it on the app. Before I go, just remember this, as always, it's not your job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the loaves and fish.